Before we begin, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to support the channel by helping us reach 10,000 subscribers. Start. Julian Rhodes stood outside the big building. There were fancy cars all around him, and cameras were flashing. Reporters were taking pictures. Julian wore a black suit that was made just for him. He looked strong and confident. His hair was neat, and his shiny silver buttons sparkled in the lights. This was his night, a night to show everyone how far he had come, from nothing to becoming a rich man all by himself. A red rope was moved, and Julian walked proudly down a long marble path. Everyone moved out of the way. Rich guests, reporters, and important people watched him. The air smelled like jasmine and roses. His helper, Harper, came close and whispered something, but Julian smiled and waved her off. He didn't need reminders. He already knew what he wanted to say. He had his own plan. Far across the big room, Ela Bennett stood with her two boys. She held their hands tightly. Their names were Micah and Levi. They wore matching gray suits and had serious looks on their faces. Ela wore a soft white dress. It was beautiful, but not too flashy. She liked it that way. Isla almost didn't come to the party. When she saw the invitation, it didn't have a name, and it seemed like it came from nowhere. She wanted to say no. She didn't like parties, especially not ones with Julian Rhodes. But her friends at the center where she worked told her this event could help get money for our programs. So Ela came, not for Julian, but for her boys, and for the children she helped at work. Now, standing under the bright lights, Isla felt a strong feeling in her chest. She remembered the life she once had, the life she left behind. The music got softer. A clink of glasses told everyone the host had arrived. Julian walked up to the stage like a king. He fixed his jacket and picked up the shiny microphone. "Good evening, everyone," he said with a smile. "Welcome to the Rhodes Charity Gala. Tonight, we're not just here for fun. We're here to celebrate change, dreams, and giving." People clapped gently and listened. Julian kept talking. "Years ago, I had nothing. No money. No one knew my name. I had only a dream and then the will to make it happen. Some of you believed in me. Some didn't." He stopped for a moment on purpose. Then he looked to the back of the room. He saw Isla. He smiled, not mean, but not sweet either. "It's funny how life works," he said. "One day you're sharing school books, and the next day you're standing on stage, giving back to the same people who once doubted you." Micah and Levi looked up at their mom. "Is he talking about you?" Levi whispered. Isla squeezed their hands tighter. Julian kept talking. He sounded kind, but there was something else in his voice, like he wanted to show off. This wasn't just a party, it was Julian's big moment. Then Isla did something surprising. She let go of her boy's hands. Her heels clicked on the floor as she walked toward the front. She stopped, lifted her chin, and said, "Mr. Rhodes, tonight is about giving, not showing off." The room became very quiet. Julian froze. For the first time, he didn't know what to say. "Isla," he said, pretending to be surprised, "I didn't see you there." Then he looked at the boys standing behind her. "And who are these young men with you?" Isla stood tall. "These are my sons," she said clearly. "Micah and Levi." Gasps filled the room. Cameras clicked like thunder. Julian stared at the boys. His breath caught. Something felt strange, familiar. Micah's eyes, Levi's way of standing. It was like looking at himself many years ago. "They're my sons," Ayla said again. "Our sons." Julian's eyes grew wide. He looked at Micah, quiet and strong, and then at Levi, nervous but curious. The room was full of whispers and stares. Julian quickly walked down from the stage. He dropped the microphone. "Isla," he said, his voice shaking, "are you telling me?" "You left before you could know," Ela said softly. "You went away and never came back." "I didn't know you were going to have a baby," Julian whispered. "You never asked," Isla said. Everyone heard the truth in those few words. Harper, Julian's helper, ran up and whispered, "Julian, the press is watching. You're losing the room." But Julian didn't care. He turned to Micah and Levi. They looked back at him, confused, hurt, but curious. I didn't know, Julian said. Not until tonight, I promise. He held out his hand. Micah looked at it for a moment, then slowly reached out. Everyone held their breath. Dad, Micah asked in a quiet voice. It broke something inside Julian. He dropped to his knees and hugged both boys. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. If I knew, I would have come back. I would have stayed. Isla closed her eyes. She felt tears but tried not to cry. Cameras flashed again. Some guests clapped. Others wiped their eyes. This wasn't a fancy party anymore. It was a moment no one could have guessed, a moment where Julian saw what he had missed. The room stood still. People forgot their drinks, their food, and even their small talk. Only the cameras moved, clicking over and over. They caught the exact moment Julian hugged the boys he had never met. At a table, a young reporter whispered, "Is this real?" Another nodded. "You can't make this up." But Isla had lived it. Julian stood up, his hands on the boy's shoulders. He looked out at the crowd. His face showed every feeling. He had always been strong, always in control, but not now. Now he looked lost and full of emotion. He turned to Isla. "You should have told me," he said. Isla looked straight at him. "And would you have stayed, or would you still have chosen your big dreams?" Julian didn't answer. Micah stepped between them. He looked serious. "What happened between you two?" he asked. Isla took a deep breath. "It's time you knew," she said. Many years ago in a small college, Isla and Julian sat together in the second row. Julian loved business. Isla loved books, but they were best friends. They talked about dreams and helped each other study. They spent time in the libraries, outside in the sun, and in quiet coffee shops. They dreamed of starting something big together, a company that would help people. Julian was charming and full of big ideas. Isla was kind and smart and kept everything real. They were in love. One day, Julian got a big offer from a tech company in California. It was far away, but it paid well. Isla got into a fellowship on the East Coast. They were supposed to stay near each other. "I'll come back," Julian said. "Just give me a few months." "You promise?" Isla asked. Julian smiled and touched her cheek. "You're my forever." But life moved fast. The company grew. More meetings, more events, more travel. Julian called less, texted less. One day, the calls just stopped. Isla was alone in a hospital room. She had just had Micah and Levi. She held one baby in each arm. She was tired but hopeful. "I'll do it without him," she whispered. She kissed their tiny foreheads. There was a photo of Julian beside her. She turned it face down. Back in the ballroom, Micah looked upset. "So, he just left?" "I thought she was busy with her fellowship," Julian said. "I didn't hear from her again." "You didn't try," Isla said gently. "I came back once," Julian said. "After I got some money. I looked for you at school, but you were gone." "I was in the hospital," Isla whispered. Julian's face fell. I came back at the worst time, and I still left again." Everything felt heavy and quiet. Micah and Vi looked at each other. Without speaking, they understood something. They shared the same pain. "I'm sorry," Julian said again. "I know it's not enough, but I mean it." Isla nodded. "We're here now. But this isn't about saying sorry. It's about what you do next." Later that night, after the big ballroom party ended and all the guests went home with tears in their eyes and crumpled programs in their hands, Julian stayed behind. He sat alone in the quiet balcony lounge. The bright lights were turned down and everything felt still. He looked at the empty dance floor below. It used to feel like his world, but now it felt like a place full of memories and secrets. Harper, his assistant, walked over carefully. "The news people want to comment," she said gently. "They're calling it the surprise family reveal of the year." Julian didn't answer. "Are you okay?" she asked. He let out a big breath. "No, but I will be." Back in their small two-bedroom home, Ila helped the twins change out of their fancy clothes. She hung up their jackets and folded their pants. Micah sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. "He looked scared," Micah said. "He probably was," Isla replied. "He cried," Levi added. "I've never seen a grown man cry like that. He's still learning, Isla said softly, just like we are. That night, Julian couldn't sleep. He sat in his big apartment high above the city, holding a bottle of water and looking at old college pictures on his tablet. He saw Ela smiling, holding up a handmade poster during one of his school events. There was a picture of them standing together outside a building, the wind blowing her hair. One text message read, "You'll be amazing. Just don't forget what matters." His heart hurt. He had forgotten what mattered, but now he remembered. The next morning, Julian came to their doorstep. He didn't bring a limo or a helper. He came alone, holding only a tray with 3 cups of coffee. Isla opened the door slowly. She didn't expect to see him. "I know I don't deserve anything," Julian said, "but can I start by sitting down with my sons?" She waited. Micah and Levi peeked from behind the wall. They didn't say anything, just looked at him with wide eyes. "Okay," Isla said at last. "One conversation." Julian smiled, not a fake smile, but a real one. They sat on the small porch. Micah took his coffee black, trying to look grown up. Levi poured in 2 sugar packets and stirred. "I don't expect anything," Julian said quietly. "I just want to know you both, if you'll let me." Micah folded his arms. "We've done fine without you." "I believe that," Julian said, "and I'm proud of you, even if I wasn't there." "Why now?" Levi asked. Julian didn't wait, "Because I finally saw what matters. It's not my suit or that ballroom. It's knowing you both, if I still can." Isla watched them from the kitchen window, her hands shaking as she held her mug. She didn't know what hurt more, the pain Julian had caused, or the chance that he still meant something. She looked at her sons. One looked serious, the other nervously sipped his coffee. She saw their father in both of them. Not just in their eyes, but in the way Micah stayed strong when he was sad, and how Levi tried to help people feel safe. Julian hadn't just missed birthdays, he had missed their whole lives. But maybe now he was trying to be there. The next morning, the whole world already had opinions about the night before. Julian's phone was full of messages. News headlines were everywhere. Rhodes Gala surprise, tuxedos, tears, and twins. Isla Bennett, hero mom, and the hidden truth of Julian Rhodes. Videos were even worse. One clip showed Isla's voice at the gala. "These are my sons, Micah and Levi." The video had gone viral before sunrise. Harper, his assistant, sent a short message. "Stay quiet. No comments. PR will handle it." Julian didn't listen. He sat alone on the floor of his big, cold apartment, barefoot, wearing an old hoodie. One shiny cufflink still stuck to his sleeve. The place felt too tall and too far from the real world. He looked at the photo again on his tablet, the one of him and Isla in college. She had her hand on his shoulder. He had hopeful eyes. He hadn't felt like that in a long time, but now something inside whispered, "It's not too late." 4 miles away, Ela packed the Twines' lunches. Micah sat at the table with earbuds in, scrolling on his phone. He saw videos, comments, and strange guesses about who he and Levi were. Levi stared at his cereal. "Why do people say I look like a senator?" Ela sighed and put water bottles in their bags. "Ignore it. It'll go away." Micah looked up. "Will it?" he asked quietly. Isla looked him in the eye. "It will, because we won't let it control our lives." The boys nodded, but deep inside, Isla knew their quiet life had been shaken. Not ruined, but changed forever. That day, Julian didn't go to work. Instead, he walked slowly by the river. The air was cold, but he didn't care. He was thinking, should he give up or should he keep trying? He chose to try. By lunchtime, he was standing in front of Isla's house again. He didn't wear a suit. He didn't bring gifts. He only held a folded piece of notebook paper. He knocked. Micah opened the door. He looked Julian up and down. "You're here again." Julian nodded. "I am." Isla came to the door. Her arms were crossed. Julian held out the paper. "Can I read this to you?" "Just once." Isla looked at Micah. The boy stepped aside. "I'll let Mom decide." She stepped outside and closed the door behind her. Julian opened the paper with shaking hands. "I wrote this at 3 in the morning," he said, "because I needed to say something real." He read aloud, Dear Micah and Levi, I missed your first steps, your first words, and your first broken hearts. I missed your games, school plays, and birthday wishes. But if you let me, I won't miss anything else. I can't change the past, but I promise to make the future better. I don't want to be a sad part of your story. I want to earn a place in your lives. If that means waiting, I'll wait. If it means showing up every day, I'll be there, even for early math homework. I'll bring the pencils. I'm not asking for forgiveness right now, just a chance. He looked up, just one chance. Isla leaned on the porch rail, her eyes filled with feelings. You once said the most important thing to invest in is time, she said. I remember, Julian whispered, but you gave it to everything except us. Julian looked down. You're right. There was a long silence. Then Isla said, Come tomorrow, 7:30. They leave for school at 8. Julian's eyes widened. Really? She nodded. You want a chance? Prove it. The next morning, Julian came at 7:26. He brought coffee, toast, and even a laminated math worksheet. The twins looked surprised. Micah raised an eyebrow. You laminated math? Julian smiled nervously. Maybe I tried too hard. Levi laughed. They sat together. At first, it was awkward. They talked about school, music, and little things. Micah rolled his eyes. Levi gave short answers. But by the time the toast was gone, something changed. They weren't smiling yet, but they weren't angry either. Later that day, Julian went to his office for the first time since the party. But something was different. The tall buildings outside felt far away now. The busy meetings and emails didn't seem as important. His assistant came in with a list of calls. Julian looked at it, then pushed it aside. Move all meetings after 4. From now on. Harper blinked. All of them? Yes. I'm picking up my sons from school. At first, people whispered about it. Some thought it was just for good publicity. Some thought he was changing. But when he went to Levi's music show and clapped the loudest, the whispers stopped. Because it was real. One night, Isla sat folding laundry while the boys worked on a science project. Julian sat on the floor holding a plastic volcano. Wait, he said in a funny voice. This glue is flammable. Levi laughed. Only if you microwave it. Micah rolled his eyes. We're not microwaving anything. Isla watched them smiling. Something in her heart felt soft again. A part of her still hurt, but another part wanted to believe. She stepped outside to get some air. Julian followed her. Thank you, he said. Isla nodded. They're happier lately. Julian looked at the stars. So am I. She glanced at him. You're still learning. I am. But you're showing up, she said. They looked at each other. No anger, just understanding. They remembered who they used to be and who they might become again. Julian Rhodes had been rich for years. He knew how to talk in meetings and make big deals. But with his sons, he was new. He made mistakes. The first time he tried to drop them off at school, he got the time wrong and got stuck in a long line of cars. So many cones, he said. Micah sank low in his seat, embarrassed. Levi giggled. Want me to tell the kids a CEO dropped us off in a coffee-stained hoodie? Please do, Julian smiled, brushing sugar off his shirt. The boys smiled as they shut the car doors. And that meant everything. Isla didn't hover. She didn't ask the boys too many questions, but she noticed things. The boys laughed more. Micah hummed while doing homework. Levi started his stories with, Guess what Dad did today? It was slow and quiet, but something was getting better. One Saturday afternoon, Julian came to take the boys for their first trip alone. He had promised something simple, a chess game with Micah at a nearby cafe, and a visit to the music store with Levi. But Ela still watched them from the window. Her heart felt nervous. Trust didn't come back quickly. It came back slowly, with time spent together, kind words, and doing the same good things again and again. Later that day, Isla got a message from Julian. It was a photo of Micah smiling proudly at a chessboard, arms crossed like a winner. The message said, Your son beat me twice. Isla smiled without meaning to. Something was changing. Julian started saying no to big fancy events. He stopped going to important meetings with big business people. One of his coworkers asked him, surprised, "You're saying no to the dinner with the rich people from the UAE?" Julian smiled and said, "I have dinner with my sons. We're making chicken Alfredo. That's more important." Levi, who was very kind and caring, was the first to show love. One morning, while waiting for the school bus, he leaned against Julian and whispered, "Thanks for not giving up." Julian's voice shook as he replied, "Thanks for letting me try." Micah was slower to show how he felt, but he showed it in little ways. One day, he left an old pair of shoes at Julian's apartment without meaning to. Another time, he asked Julian to come to his soccer game without anyone reminding him. That meant something. Isla felt herself pulled into all of this, even though she was still unsure. She started inviting Julian to Sunday dinners. At first, he just brought dessert. Then he offered to help with the dishes. One night, he cleaned the whole table before she could stop him. His sleeves were rolled up and he was whistling a tune. Isla laughed and asked, "What are you doing?" Julian smiled, "Earning my seat." It was the kind of thing he used to say just to sound charming. But now it felt real. Weeks went by. They all found a rhythm. Julian did after-school pickups, weekend grocery shopping, and made pancake breakfasts. He even bought a cheap guitar and started learning how to play it so he could join Levi during his music lessons. He wasn't very good, but he tried. One night, Isla stood in the doorway of Julian's small apartment. Micah was doing homework on the couch. Levi was softly playing his guitar. Julian, wearing glasses, was looking at school papers. "You've changed," Isla said gently. Julian looked up, surprised. "I had to." She stepped inside. "Why now?" Julian put the papers down and said, "I used to think being successful meant doing everything by myself, but now I know that success means nothing if you don't have someone to share it with." Isla's eyes got wet. They sat quietly for a moment. Then she said, "I'm scared." He didn't ask what she meant. He already knew. He reached out, took her hand, and whispered, "Me too." One evening, after a fundraiser, Isla invited Julian to walk home with them. It was a cool night. The air smelled like spring and barbecue from far away. The boys ran ahead, racing each other. Isla and Julian walked slowly behind. Julian put his hands in his pockets and said, "I still think about that college lecture hall." "I do too," Isla said. "We were so strong back then," he said. "We could be again." She raised her eyebrow. "Julian," he smiled. "No rush, no pressure, just hope." Isla gave him a small, real smile. "Hope is a start." Then came a big surprise. Micah brought home a permission slip for a school camping trip. It needed a parent helper, and to everyone's shock, even Julian's, he signed up. The night before the trip, Julian stood in front of a mirror, struggling to pack the sleeping bag. He watched videos on how to make a campfire. At 5:30 a.m., he picked up Micah. When they returned on Sunday, tired and covered in mud, Micah gave Julian a big hug without anyone telling him to. Isla saw it, and her heart felt full. Her eyes were wet. That night, after the boys were in bed, Isla gave Julian a small envelope. Inside was a drawing. 2 boys, a woman, and a man with shiny cufflinks holding a soccer ball. At the top were the words written in big, uneven letters, "Family." "Levi drew it," Isla said, her voice a little shaky. Julian touched the drawing gently. He didn't say anything for a while. Then he whispered, "I want to frame this." Isla smiled. "It's not even neat. That's what makes it perfect," Julian said. As the weather got warmer, so did the quiet moments between Isla and Julian. They didn't hurry. They didn't call it anything. But one afternoon, at the park after a fair, Isla rested her head on Julian's shoulder. It wasn't a big moment. It was calm and real. Julian didn't move. In that peaceful moment, they both knew something true was growing between them. There's a special kind of silence that comes when people stop talking about who they want to be and just become that person. That silence came for Julian Rhodes one day after a business meeting. The company he helped start no longer felt like home. In the meeting room, his coworkers looked at him with confused faces. You've missed 4 of the last 6 meetings, one of them said. Julian nodded. I know. Are you taking time off? Someone asked. Julian looked at a photo in his bag. It was Micah blowing out birthday candles and Levi clapping with frosting on his face. I've changed, Julian said. What do you mean? Someone asked. I'm stepping down, he said. I'm selling my part of the company. I'll still help, but I won't be the boss anymore. Everyone was shocked. Why now? Julian's answer was simple, because my boys only get one father. I don't want them to grow up wondering where I was. Isla heard the news before he told her. Her friend Tara called and said, Did you hear? Your Julian left his company. Isla was folding the twins' clothes. She whispered, He's not my anything. But her hands shook a little. That night, Isla was cutting carrots in the kitchen when Julian walked in with a grocery bag. I thought I'd make dinner, he said. She looked surprised. You cook now? He held up a packet of pasta. I Googled easy family meals and didn't panic this time. She smiled and let him cook. While he stirred the sauce, Isla leaned on the counter. So you quit your job, she said. Julian kept stirring. Yeah. She waited. Why? Because I was tired of building something big and missing the little things, he said. I didn't do it to impress you. I did it because I can't miss Levi's music shows or Micah's science days anymore. I already missed too much. Isla drank some water, thinking. Then she said, I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be here. Julian turned to her and said, Then I'll stay. The next few weeks were like a slow, careful dance. Isla didn't rush. She still remembered the nights she had to take care of sick babies alone, the doctor visits, the birthdays with just one parent, and the loneliness. But now Julian was there, really there. He fixed the sink, helped with school projects, played cards after dinner. He even learned how to braid hair, kind of, so he could help Isla's niece. One day, Isla came home from work and saw the boys lying on the floor watching a movie. Julian was sleeping between them, snoring softly. She didn't wake him. She just sat and watched, and something inside her heart softened again. Levi was the first to ask a hard question. Dad, why didn't you come back sooner? Julian didn't run away from the question. Because I was scared. Of us? No, Julian said. I was scared I wouldn't be good enough for you. Levi vited his head. But we never asked for perfect. Julian smiled. That's what I'm learning. Micah didn't ask questions. Instead, he started writing in a notebook every night. He didn't show it to anyone, but one day he left it open by mistake. Isla saw it. It said, He's not the dad I imagined. He's not like in movies. He's awkward and tries too hard, but he listens and he shows up. Maybe that's better. Isla gently closed the notebook, her eyes filled with tears. One rainy Saturday, Isla and Julian sat in a small cafe while the boys were at a birthday party. It was the first time in a long time they were alone. Rain tapped on the window. The air smelled like coffee and rain. I didn't think we'd be here, Isla said. Me neither, Julian said, but I'm glad. She stirred her tea. You were gone for a long time, I know. I raised them without you. I know, but they still love you. I know. Her voice shook. And I still feel something. Julian looked at her, surprised. She met his eyes. I'm scared to trust you again, but I'm more scared of not giving us a chance. He slowly reached out and held her hand. Then let's not rush, he whispered. Let's just keep showing up, one day at a time. Isla didn't say anything. She just held on tightly. When someone you love hurts you badly but comes back and says sorry with a kind heart, can you let them back into your life? What does healing look like for you? If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. At the next community fundraiser, Julian stood beside Isla. He wasn't giving a big speech. He was just helping. He gave out food, cleaned tables, and put out chairs. One person joked, "Never thought I'd see Julian Rhodes with a mop." Julian laughed and said, "I'm better at this than I was at business deals." Isla watched him from across the room. The man she once loved now looked open, kind, and happy. That night, As they locked the doors to the center, Isla quietly took Julian's hand. He held her hand too. Sometimes the quiet moments are the most powerful. It was a normal Monday evening. Nothing fancy. Isla checked the mail while Micah and Levi ran around the yard. The wind moved gently through the trees and porch lights turned on one by one. Julian drove up in his car. He got out with a bag of groceries and 2 old soccer balls. He smiled and said, "I thought these might still be good for one more game." The boys didn't say anything. They ran up and hugged him. Isla stood at the door with her arms crossed, hiding a smile. This had become normal now. Julian coming by without saying anything first. He came not with big words, but with small, kind actions. And Isla started thinking about things she hadn't thought of in years. That night, the twins were asleep. The living room was quiet. Isla sat on the couch with a soft blanket. Julian sat across from her with his legs stretched out. They shared a cup of tea and old songs played softly. "I remember our first apartment," Isla said. "The one with the broken faucet and that ugly orange rug." Julian laughed. "You mean the rug you said had character?" "It did." She smiled. "You just didn't have good taste." He smiled but didn't say anything. Isla looked at him. He had changed. Not the young gray, busy man she fell in love with, but someone calmer and kinder. She moved a little. "Sometimes I wonder if we would have made it if we didn't break up." Julian looked serious. "I used to think about that every night, but now I believe we needed to break apart so we could come back better." Isla looked down. "I loved you. I never stopped." Julian moved closer and gently held her hands. "I loved you every day, even when I didn't say it." They looked into each other's eyes. It was very quiet. Then Isla reached out and touched his cheek. Julian closed his eyes. That night, they sat side by side until they fell asleep. They weren't lovers yet, but they were closer than friends. They were starting to heal. The next morning, Isla woke up early. She found Julian in the kitchen trying to make pancakes. He wasn't very good at it. She laughed and said, "You missed a spot," pointing at pancake batter on the wall. "I call it abstract cooking," he said, flipping a funny-looking pancake. The twins came in sleepy but smiling. They joined in the fun. Levi set the plates, Micah gave out forks, and for the first time, Isla didn't have to do everything. They were doing it together. Later that week, Julian asked Isla to go out, not to a fancy place, just to the botanical garden she loved in college. They used to sneak in there. They arrived at sunset. The flowers were still open. The paths were quiet. Isla stopped at a bench they used to sit on. She sat down and Julian sat next to her. "Do you remember what you told me here?" she asked. He nodded. "That I'd marry you someday." She smiled. "And you said you'd name our first son Elijah." He laughed. Micah was pretty close. She reached into her purse and gave him a folded paper. It was a letter he wrote her in college before he left for California. He opened it and read it. "I was so sure back then," he whispered. "You still can be," she said. He looked at her, surprised. "I'm not promising anything," Isla said, "but I'm not afraid anymore." Julian felt emotional. "Then let's walk together, one step at a time." She stood up. He held out his arm. She took it. Spring came slowly. Julian was no longer just a visitor. He helped at school, at the center, and even drove Isla's mom to the doctor. He didn't ask for anything. He just helped. And Isla saw it all. One Sunday, they went hiking. Isla packed lunch. Micah complained about bugs. Levi wanted to be the leader. It started raining. They ran under a tree, laughing. Isla wiped the rain from Julian's face. "This is silly," she said. "It's perfect," he said, touching her cheek. She didn't argue. She kissed him. That night, Isla looked at herself in the mirror. Her face had more lines, but also more strength. She walked down the hallway and knocked on the guest room door. Julian opened it. She stepped inside. They didn't need words. They chose each other. Not because they were perfect, but because they were ready. Healing doesn't come with a big moment. It comes quietly, in simple things, in shared coffee cups, in hearing someone laugh again and knowing that laugh belongs in your life. A year ago, Julian found out he was a dad. Now he was in the kitchen making pancakes. Levi fed their little kitten. Micah played music on his phone. It wasn't a holiday, it was just Sunday, and Julian felt happy. Later, he and Isla sat on the front steps drinking tea. The boys played soccer. He turned to Isla. "I've been thinking," he said. She smiled. "That usually means trouble." "Not this time," he laughed. "I want to plan another gala, not like before, this time to celebrate second chances. Love, family, and community." She looked at him. "You, the boys, everything we have. I want to do this with you." Isla smiled. "That might be your first good idea without a tie." They planned the gala together. No secrets, no fancy stuff, just love. They used the same hall where kids had workshops, no tuxedos, just fun shirts, art by kids on the walls. Ayla did the decorations. Julian handled the food. The boys drew the invitations. It was small. It was real. And that was the best part. One afternoon, Julian sat with Micah at the center. Micah was reading. "I used to read like that," Julian said, "before I got too busy." Micah didn't look up. "You mean before you left?" Julian looked down. Yeah, a long silence. Then Micah said, "You're here now. That's what matters." Julian felt a lump in his throat. "Thank you." "Just don't mess it up," Micah said. Julian smiled. "Deal." The night before the gala, Isla found Julian on his balcony. "You're nervous," she said. He nodded. "I keep thinking about the last one." "You didn't ruin it," she said. "You just weren't ready." He looked at her. "I'm ready now." She stepped closer. "Then prove it." She handed him a small pouch. Inside were cufflinks, not shiny ones. They were made of wood carved by Levi. Micah helped with the design. "They're not perfect," she whispered, "and that's what makes them perfect." Julian smiled, his eyes watery. "I'll wear them proudly." At the gala, people came in. No cameras, just happy sounds and smells of fresh bread. Kids' paintings and poems were on the walls. Isla stood in a blue dress, no makeup, just beautiful. Julian came to her. "You're beautiful." She smiled. "You're late." "I was crying in the bathroom," he said. She laughed and kissed his cheek. "Let's do this." Micah spoke first. "Last year, I didn't know my dad. I only knew the person in news stories, but now I know the man who makes bad pancakes, snores during movies, and tells me he's proud before I even finish." Then Levi said, "My dad joined my guitar class. I still don't know how he passed, but he shows up. That's what matters." People clapped. Then Julian spoke. "Good evening, or maybe good life. Tonight is not about what I did alone. It's about what we did together. Isla, Micah, Levi, you gave me a second chance. You taught me that love isn't big and loud. It's in listening, coming back, and staying." He took out a small ring box. Everyone went quiet. Isla looked surprised. Julian stepped down and knelt. "This is not a perfect proposal. It's a promise to keep going, to walk beside you and the boys. Will you keep building this life with me?" Isla had tears in her eyes. She looked at the boys. Levi gave a thumbs up. Micah mouthed, "Do it." Isla looked back at Julian. "Yes," she said softly. "Yes, I will." The room was full of cheers and happy sounds. Everyone was laughing, dancing, and hugging under the pretty fairy lights that hung on the walls. Micah played a soft song on his guitar, and Levi sang gently. Isla danced in Julian's arms, smiling and happy. Later, they all went outside into the cool night air. The stars twinkled in the sky. For the first time in a long while, everything felt peaceful and perfect. It felt like home. A whole year passed since that special night in the community center. That night, the family chose to start over, not with sorry words, but with love and care. Now, it was the first Saturday of spring. Julian Rhodes was in the backyard of their small home near the city. He wore a paint-covered apron, and his hair had sawdust in it. He had a pencil behind his ear. Across the grass, Levi ran after the little foster kitten, laughing. Micah sat on the porch steps reading a book. From the kitchen window came the smell of yummy fresh bread. Inside, Isla was slicing fruit and humming a soft song. She wore a pearl necklace that Julian gave her on their anniversary. It wasn't shiny or fancy, but it was special. Later that morning, the whole family sat on the living room floor. Julian held a homemade calendar that Micah made with cardboard and string. "What's this?" Julian asked with a big smile. "It's our family tradition board," Micah said proudly. "Every month we do something fun together." Levi pointed to the month of March. "This month it's park picnics and game night every Friday." "And next month?" Isla asked. "Lots of road trips," Levi said excitedly. Julian laughed and said, "I guess I better buy more car snacks." They all laughed together. At noon, Julian and Isla took a walk around their neighborhood. Flowers were blooming. Neighbors waved from their porches. A little girl rode by on a pink scooter and shouted, "Happy Saturday," with a big gap-toothed smile. Julian reached out for Isla's hand. She held it. They walked quietly until they reached a small garden near an old church. Isla had helped fix it up with some local kids. Now it was full of flowers, vegetables, and hope. Julian turned to Isla. "I've been offered a job. It's small and part-time," he said, "helping young people learn how to start their own businesses." Isla looked surprised. "And you want to do it?" Julian nodded. "I already said yes." Isla smiled. "You're not going back to your old life, are you?" He shook his head. "No, I'm moving forward." That evening, the family ate dinner in the backyard under soft, glowing lanterns. Micah grilled burgers with Julian. Levi softly played a tune on his guitar. Isla set the table with plates painted by kids from her after-school program. The wind was gentle. The laughter was loud. It was simple and perfect. After dinner, as the boys cleaned up, Julian took Isla aside. "I have something for you," he said. She smiled playfully. "Is it alive?" "No," he laughed, "but it is very special." He gave her a small, old envelope. Inside was a folded note, yellow at the edges. Ela opened it, her eyes filled with tears. It was a note she had written to Julian back in college. She had written it in the corner of his textbook. It said, "Chase purpose, not applause. I believe in you." Julian looked at her gently. "I kept it all this time," he whispered. Isla touched the note like it was a treasure. Then she touched his face with love. The next morning, Ela stood by the window. She watched Julian and the boys in the yard. They were planting a small tree. It was just as tall as Micah. Its branches were tiny, but its roots were strong, just like them. Later that week, Isla went to speak at a special event at the community center. The host said, "Here is Isla Bennett, a mother, mentor, and leader of our amazing programs." Isla smiled kindly and said, "I'm just someone who believes every story can be changed, even the ones we're scared to finish." The crowd clapped. At the back of the room, Julian stood holding sunflowers. Micah and Levi clapped the loudest. Ela looked at them and felt her heart grow with love. This was her family. This was her new beginning. It wasn't going back to the past. It was about loving the present. On their fridge at home was a sign. It said, "Not perfect, but present," and that's enough. Underneath the sign was a family photo. 4 faces, 1 story, rooted in truth, growing in love, a forever home. Thanks for watching. If you liked the story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Check out our other videos too. See you in the next one.